What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at 1348 Ex Voto, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is an upcoming action-adventure game with a huge focus on its narrative set in medieval Italy. Now, this game is releasing on March 12th, but they recently put out a public demo for it over on Steam, which is how I'm bringing you this video. But I do want to say up front, after having checked this out for myself, I would say this probably isn't really a game for me, to be honest, and that is because, while its narrative seems interesting enough for what it is that they're trying to do, I suppose gameplay-wise it seems a little on the uninspired side. It's kind of clunky, the faces hit me with an uncanny valley vibe that is hard to shake. I don't know if this is the case for just the demo, but the camera is also super close up on your character, and there's like a head bob that you can't seem to turn off, and it makes me a little bit nauseous all combined. And when you start putting that stuff together, it just doesn't seem like a game I would want to play in full, to be completely honest with you guys. And yet, I'd seen some people talking about this one, so I figured maybe this video would still be helpful to someone in deciding things for themselves. So let's get on with the rest of this. First things first, what's that title about? Bit of an odd one. Well, it makes sense in the context of the story setup, which is pretty much what the demo shows you. You see, the game takes place in medieval Italy, and if I am not mistaken, 1348 is the year the Black Plague kind of hit Italy pretty hard. Ex Voto is actually a term that, again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly, but I do know what it is. This is essentially a religious gift that you give for a fulfilled vow, so to speak. So it can be given just to give it, I suppose, but the idea is that if you prayed for something and you received help or things went in your favor or whatever else, you should give thanks by giving an ex voto. These were very commonly paintings, but I do believe there have also been other stuff as well. But it was a popular practice at one time, which is how I knew about it without having to look it up. And the reason for that is our main character, I believe her name is Eta, makes a vow and prays for strength, more or less, as she sets off on a journey to avenge her fallen village or settlement in general, I suppose you could call it, because it was burned down and attacked by raiders who seem to have kidnapped her best friend, though it would seem that the way historians would describe that relationship is that they were very close friends. Either way, her friend Bianca seems to have been kidnapped during this attack, and you set off on this journey to find her, obviously, and then that's the vow that you would theoretically be giving a gift for receiving help with, I would guess. But still more to go. So we play as Eta here, who is described by the Steam page as a young knight errant, though that does seem to be overselling it a little bit, at least from the intro. Because the intro to the game just seems to imply that she was trained in general swordsmanship by her father, but that wouldn't really constitute a knight, so there is that. But during this you get a conversation with Bianca and kind of set up their relationship, but she runs off back to town in order to get cleaned up, but a short while later you hear the alarm bells ringing from town and you go rushing back to find it being attacked by bandits, and you have to fight your way through the town, which is where this game kind of hits me with a weird narrative moment personally. So this young woman we're playing as is implied to be pretty young, like I'm guessing like teenage range, and then I assume, despite being trained in swordsmanship, she is not in fact going around murdering people left and right, and yet, like right as you get to town, you immediately just get in a regular old sword fight, kill a guy, and move on. And I feel like that probably should have been a bigger moment in this story, but it's kind of just a blip, because not only do you kill that guy, you then fight through like 10 other bandits, including a 4-on-1 fight, which, to be honest, just seems a little bit ridiculous, because they're all just kind of standing around waiting to fight you instead of overpowering the teenage girl. Now, I don't necessarily think games need to be super realistic, but this does seem like the kind of game that is going for accuracy, given how much the Steam page talks about how much of their combat is inspired by historical European martial arts. And I think what they're trying to do here could work. I just would have to have this rearranged personally, and given that this game is a couple of weeks from release, I don't see that happening. And yet, in spite of this demo's relatively short runtime, I can tell you a few other things, like about the progression systems. So progression seems to come down to your sword, artifacts that you will pick up, and then your skills, which you will increase by finding paper. You don't get to modify your sword in this demo, however you can see the UI for it. It looks like you'll find parts for the sword that you can then swap out to affect how it plays. You only have access to one artifact, which you start the demo with, but artifacts look to be equipables that you have a set limit for, and they each take up these little slots below the menu there. So I assume that bar is the maximum that you can have equipped, and then the artifacts provide different effects, like the one you start with will automatically heal you if you are about to die. Provided, of course, you have the food to do it, which is your primary method of healing, as you'll pick up food as you explore, which will restore about 1 heart per segment of food buildup that you have on you. Now, there is meant to be a big emphasis on combat here, so let's talk a little bit about it. This is not, it being an action-adventure, really going to have a particularly complicated combat system, and it's not like a Souls-like or anything. Basically, enemies are going to swing at you, you are going to either dodge or block said attacks. However, that feels clunky. That's the part that feels not great to me, because sometimes you dodge and you get hit anyway, and it seems to come down to the fact that your dodge does not move you very far, and then sometimes as the swing is coming in, you'll dodge, but you don't go far enough and the swing still just hits you. So that doesn't feel great. Looks like blocking will probably be the way to mitigate most damage, just because of how bad that feels, at least to me. But in between getting attacked by enemies, you're obviously going to put up your own attacks, and your goal is basically to entirely break the enemy's guard, which then seems to just kill them outright. In order to do this, you have to land a bunch of attacks and, of course, not let their guard build back up. You can do this by spamming attacks, both one-handed and two-handed, which form the game's stances. The demo didn't give too much instruction here. It really just said that if your one-handed attacks get blocked a bunch, just like switch over to two-handed, which I guess is fine. And then the only other thing of note seems to be the perfect attacks. So you can combo, which can be upgraded, but you can, of course, make multiple swings at once. And if you time those right at the moment your attack hits the enemy, that is to say you engage the next attack right as the first attack lands, you'll engage with perfect attacks, which are faster, deal more damage to guard, etc., etc. So very basic there. Again, you seem to mostly fight enemies one-on-one, even if there's multiple around. And then the way you get better at combat is by increasing your skills. In order to increase skills, you need to first find papers laying around. These papers are going to effectively act as skill points and allow you to put points into some of the trees for either your intelligence, strength, fortitude, or speed. Fortitude and speed were not available in the demo, but intelligence and strength allowed you to, if you could find some scrolls, upgrade things like health, initiative, which lets you just get free perfect attacks, and then also augment your combos and stuff with the different stances. Overall, for an action adventure, I think it's fine, but it didn't really feel great to play, and given how much emphasis that they seem to have been putting on it on the Steam page and everything, that doesn't bode well for me. Now, we're not quite done yet, because there is one aspect of this that I enjoyed quite a bit, and that is actually the depiction, of course, of medieval Italy. Again, the Black Plague seems to be kicking off in full here, and you see a lot of that in town. In fact, it was stated by the characters that the reason this raid was seemingly successful is because the town didn't really have any way of defending itself, given all the deaths caused by the plague. And running through this run-down little village, seeing the scenery, etc., especially all of the armors and everything relevant to the time period, despite whether or not they're accurate, I have no idea about the specifics of what was available when, timeline-wise. Can't deny it looked pretty cool. And then I would have to imagine you're probably, at least to some degree, traveling around the countryside, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there to show off the setting that the game is taking place in, which would be what I would want out of this game personally, just from experiencing this demo at least. That said, I don't know exactly how much there would be in this game of that, because it is a pretty cheap game, to be honest. They've already announced the price, which is going to be $25 US. But the good news with that price, though, I suppose, is if you enjoyed the demo and wanted to play the full game, it's far from a full-price AAA title or anything like that. But speaking for myself, after having played this demo, as mentioned, I just don't think this one's for me. The story didn't really hook me in, the gameplay doesn't feel good enough to interest me, and then, if all of that wasn't enough, this game's release date, March 12th, is the same day Greedfall 2 is launching out of early access, which is of more interest to me, and the fact that there are games both releasing just before and slightly after this, like Crimson Desert as an example. I'll probably go ahead and skip this one for myself at least, but putting all that together, that's pretty much all I've got to say on this one. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about all this. If you've tried the demo, I'd love to hear some other people's opinions about it. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.